So our speaker today is Troy Vosseller. He is a good friend of mine from college. We actually lived in the same dorm, and my room was like directly on top of his room. He is the co-founder of Generator, which he helped start in 2012. And to date, Generator has invested in 105 different startups, which combined employ more than 3,000 people, and they've raised more than $400 million in venture capital. So Troy came to Generator from the University of Wisconsin Law School's Law and Entrepreneurship Clinic, which is a program providing free legal services to startup businesses and entrepreneurs, where he worked as an assistant clinical professor and supervising attorney. As an undergraduate at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, Troy founded the most cliche student startup imaginable, a t-shirt company. It was a success, Scani, and today Scani Nation continues to market a line of apparel that focuses on celebrating the Wisconsin lifestyle. Troy holds a BA, MBA, and JD, all from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So welcome, Troy.
Thanks, Aaron. I appreciate you having me. I'm flattered to be here. I'm going to share my screen and have a little overview deck of kind of all things Generator that we work on. So let me get this going. And we should be good to go. So the main crux around, what I spend my time on today has very much been this kind of entrepreneurial career path, if you will. And so that's led, it started with that t-shirt company out of my dorm room where I lived in the same dorm as Aaron. That led me to a role at the UW Law School where I got to work with startup entrepreneurs and small business owners and help them build their companies. And then most recently, starting 8 years ago, my business partner and I created Generator. A little background on Generator. I always like to start with our mission. Our mission is that we want to be the best partner for a community to invest in its best and brightest. And we do that via what we call our Generator platform. So we've created programs that really help connect investors, startups, entrepreneurs, artists, investors, universities, across a pretty broad spectrum. So that is there's a lot of logos on the screen, and I'll dive into each a little bit deeper. But we do everything with what we call pre-accelerators, helping entrepreneurs at a very early stage. We have accelerator programs where we're actually making equity cash investments in exchange for some shares of stock in these entrepreneurs. We do a lot of work with corporations, specifically around engaging them around innovation and startups and corporate venture capital. And then some of the most recent work that we're doing is really hinges on this notion of creative placemaking, where we're working with artists and musicians and treating them like small business owners, as they very much are. So the core of our work, and perhaps what we're most known for, are our nationally ranked accelerator programs. So we operate off two different brands. The B stands for the Brandery, which is a program that we acquired in Cincinnati, Ohio. And then the G stands for our Generator programs, which we run in Madison, Milwaukee, and the Twin Cities. We brand ourselves as a concierge startup accelerator. And so what that means is we scour the globe for applicants. So these are existing startups, existing entrepreneurs. They apply to our program via a competitive application process. We get more than 1,000 applications per program. And then we narrow that down to the top 5 companies who each receive a $100,000 investment from our venture capital fund. Those 5 companies, they relocate to either Madison or Milwaukee or Cincinnati, wherever our program is taking place. They spend 3 months with us, and during that time, we're connecting them with mentors, customers, corporate partners, investors, basically anything that we can do to help them grow their businesses. We do this annually in each of these 4 cities. So once per year with 5 companies in Cincinnati, once per year with 5 companies in Madison, same with Milwaukee, and then same in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. I mentioned we make an investment. So we are structured as a venture capital fund. So we have private investors into our fund. Those range from institutions like Wharf or Madison Gas and Electric in Madison to other venture funds. So a group called CSA Partners out of Milwaukee, to a long list of high net worth individuals who also invest into our fund. We manage that money and then we invest it into the startups that we serve. So traditionally we're investing $100,000 in exchange for about 6% common stock in each of these companies that is selected for Generator. I mentioned during that 3-month program, we're connecting them with mentors. So some of you on the line have even participated in this, what we call our mentor swarm. So we invite over 100 mentors who will meet one-on-one with each of the 5 entrepreneurs in kind of a speed dating-like format. The goal is if we can connect these startups with as many smart, well-connected people as possible, we're confident that positive serendipitous outcomes will emerge from that. We meet with each of these companies and mentor them on a scheduled, structured basis at least twice a week. We host some weekly group programming where we set goals and have some outside speakers. We connect them with investors. So down here on the bottom, what we call our investor swarm. In the final month of each program, we connect our 5 companies with all of the investors in our network. So we schedule one-on-one pitches with over 85 unique investors. And those range from just individual, high net worth individuals to partners at some of the biggest venture capital firms in the world. We then end the program with a large community-facing event called Premiere Night. This is an example at the Milwaukee Art Museum a couple of years ago. We attract 500 plus investors, entrepreneurs, community members, and it's a chance for our 5 companies then to get on stage and pitch and merchandise the progress and traction that they've made in those preceding 3 months. We try to be very data-driven. So since starting Generator in 2012, we have now invested in 105 startups. Those 105 companies employ more than 3,000 people. Cumulatively, they've gone on to raise nearly $500 million in follow-on venture capital. But we're particularly proud of some of the statistics in the middle. So it's not as if one company raised, 390 million and the other 104 raised 10 million, but rather 90% of our graduates will go on to raise at least $250,000. Almost 60% will go on to raise $1 million. So we're really proud of our ability to get these companies funded so that they can continue to grow. We track other things. This is all public on our website, including minority founders, female founders, veteran status, immigration status, and a host of other things that you can see on our website. And we accomplish all of this with a staff of 52 full-time employees. So everything that I'm about to describe is managed by my team or staff of a total of 52 employees. I mentioned we're nationally ranked. So each year there's a group of professors out of Rice University and MIT who do an annual what's called Seed Accelerator Rankings Project. So this is kind of akin to what US News and World Report is for colleges and universities. And through this study, Generator has been fortunate to be ranked amongst the top 15 accelerators in the United States for the last 4 years running. What's interesting is we're the only accelerator in that top 15 without a presence in a top 10 metro market. So as you can imagine, that list looks a lot like Silicon Valley, Silicon Valley, Silicon Valley, Silicon Valley, and then kind of LA, Chicago, and New York each have one. And then we're this really odd duck in Madison, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, and Cincinnati. But yet we take a lot of pride in being able to do this national caliber program in the middle of the country. We invest in startups from all over North America. So we have a confluence of companies in Wisconsin and in the upper Midwest in general, but we've made investments in Canada, Mexico, Florida, Texas, Iowa, Colorado, California, New York, Massachusetts, and other parts all over North America. We are industry agnostic. We've invested in everything from e-commerce companies to B2B software companies to hardware and Internet of Things companies, even medical devices and diagnostics. Really, we want to take a very index, high volume approach to investment and invest in companies that we think we can add value to through our network. I mentioned in total, our companies have gone on to raise more than $400 million. We're really proud that of any investor in the Midwest, we have syndicated with more partners. And by that, I mean more entities have gone on to invest in companies after Generator than any other player in the Midwest. And that includes the likes of local players like American Family Ventures or Wisconsin Investment Partners, but also some national players like Bolt or Y Combinator, RRE Ventures, True Ventures, et cetera. So again, that's our core accelerator work. And most often when people think of Generator, it's that activity. And the business model there is we're a for-profit venture capital fund. We manage private investment dollars and we invest it into these startups in the hopes that we can generate a return. But from that activity, one of the things that we recognized was fewer and fewer local startups in Madison, startups in Milwaukee, et cetera, that were maturing to the level where they were competitive for that applicant pool. So I mentioned today we get over 1,000 applications per program. And so increasingly that means we're investing in a startup from further and further afield geographically. But because of our mission and because we were rooted here in the local community, we wanted to create something that could really capture the network and experiences and relationships that we've developed, but apply that exclusively to local companies. And so in 2015, we created G-Beta. So think of G-Beta as Generator Beta. It is a free truncated version of Generator that works exclusively with local companies. So it's free, meaning in this case, we're not investing, we're not taking any equity, and we're not charging any fees or tuition or anything like that. It's totally free for the participants. And then it's shorter, it's 7 weeks instead of 12 weeks. This has become one of our fastest growing product lines. We currently operate in 22 different cities across 8 states and 2 countries. Most recently, we announced Cheyenne, Wyoming, for example. So it tends to be very much in the middle of the country in kind of secondary, tertiary markets throughout the country. But it's really been the largest part of our company to date. I mentioned that these programs are free, and we're able to put them on for free through a pretty diverse mix of sponsors. So they range from corporations. So like locally in Madison, it was American Family Insurance that got us started, and Wharf, who funds our program. But then it also includes colleges, universities, tech transfer offices, economic development groups, states, and even local municipalities who fund and sponsor these programs. The goal is we want at least 1/3 of these participants then to go on to participate in a program like our Generator equity-based accelerator, or we want them to raise a seed round of at least $50,000. So the goal is 1/3. We're currently at 55%, so we feel really good about the outcomes that we're able to produce. These statistics are all in addition to the statistics I already showed you for our flagship program. So with G-Beta alone, we've worked with 362 startups, and those companies on their own fruition have raised their own $81 million in follow-on venture capital. The third thing that we do is around corporate engagement. So I mentioned, we work with a lot of corporations who fund those local economic development efforts with G-Beta. But we also started to see more and more local corporations who were at various stages of creating their own corporate venture capital and corporate innovation departments. And for most of them, they were doing this for the first time in their company's history. And so it wasn't like they could refer to a Harvard case study or kind of a book of best practices, because this was a brand new territory for every corporation. So we created something called Project North. So Project North is a peer-to-peer membership network for corporate venture capital, corporate innovation, M&A, and strategy executives. We currently work under contract with more than 50 member corporations across the Midwest. It's local players like CUNA Mutual Group, American Family, Delve, other parts of the state like Harley-Davidson, Northwestern Mutual, Rockwell Automation, but then in adjacent states as well. And the group is very much industry agnostic. And so a lot of the best learnings come from, let's say, a retailer sharing best practices with an insurance carrier, or a manufacturer sharing best practices with a telecommunications firm. The goal of this Project North group is really peer-to-peer learning. How can we give these corporations access to top technology, top startups? How can we give them peer-to-peer knowledge exchange? And then, selfishly, how do we support the formation and growth of these corporate venture capital arms and corporate innovation departments? Because then they, in many cases, become investors into startups that go through our programs, or they become customers of startups that go through our programs, both of which are very beneficial. So programmatically, we host biannual summits. We do a lot of custom sourcing. So we'll help these corporations identify technologies and startups that could be potential either vendors or investment targets for them. We do custom retreats and consulting, and that's everything from helping a corporation create a corporate venture capital fund to advising a internal innovation arm about design sprints and design thinking. When things are not in a pandemic, we host a trip called Executives on a Plane, where we actually fly these member executives to a different tech hub. So we've gone to Toronto, San Francisco, Silicon Valley, Boston, Austin, Texas, and a host of other cities, exposing them to some of the best practices as it relates to tech entrepreneurship. An outgrowth of that work with corporations then is our on-ramp conference series. So we realized, we have great startups on one side, we have great corporations on the other. How can we bring them together for mutual benefit? And that became this notion of a conference to connect corporations and startups, which we call on-ramp. We host these on-ramp conferences around specific industry verticals. So we've hosted them in manufacturing, insurance, agriculture, healthcare, retail, and education. Our trademark for these events, again, during normal times, is we always rent out a sports stadium. So this is an example of Soldier Field in Chicago. And at that event, we have a full day of conference programming. So imagine keynotes and product demos and panel discussions and fireside chats. But then what really makes this on-ramp format unique is keeping in mind it's at a sports stadium. At the stadium, each corporation gets their own suite or luxury box. And then startups apply for the free opportunity to pitch those corporations one-on-one. And those meetings take place in the suites at the stadium. So from an infrastructure perspective, it works really well. And then there's an added kind of cachet or novelty that comes along with that. For each of these events, we get over 1,000 attendees. We get 80 plus speakers at them. We do a VIP dinner the night before for the corporations. And then there's keynote speeches. I mentioned panel discussions. We do fireside chats, and then it's completely free for startups. So we get over 300 startups from around the world who apply then to be selected to have that one-on-one pitch meeting with participating corporations. And then those meetings take place in the suites at the stadium, which is pretty neat. So through those various verticals, this is just another example of where we've gotten to engage a lot with corporations that are thinking about innovation. They're thinking about local economic development. They're thinking about new technologies and how they can engage with them. And so as a result, we've worked with all the various players here on this slide. That work has grown even further, has been extended. So I mentioned insurance is one of the verticals that we're rather deep in. For the last 5 years now, we've been hosting our On-Ramp Insurance Conference. And then for the last 2 years, we've added on a new program called the On-Ramp Insurance Accelerator. So we said, we run a nationally ranked accelerator in the form of Generator. We run an industry-leading insurance technology conference in the form of On-Ramp. How could we combine these? And so we are fortunate to get investment from Allianz Life and Securian Financial, both headquartered in the Twin Cities. And so annually, we invest and recruit 5 startups that work with us for a 3-month period, all in the insurance technology space. We've taken that a little bit further. So we're doing the same model with education and workforce innovation. This is another program in the Twin Cities where we partnered with ECMC Group, which is a large student loan processing company. Last but not least, the fourth and final pillar or product line under our Generator umbrella then is our work in what we call culture. So about 2 years ago, my business partner and I, we took a step back and asked ourselves, what's a category of entrepreneur that we think is particularly underserved? And we stumbled upon artists and musicians. And we had obviously been admirers of this accelerator model, and we think it's worked rather successfully for tech entrepreneurs. So why couldn't the same model work for a different type of entrepreneur, in this case, artists and musicians? And so this started 2 years ago with a program called Backline in Milwaukee. This is a partnership with 88.9 Radio Milwaukee, so a local listener-supported radio station in the Milwaukee area. Backline is an accelerator for musicians and bands. So we had an open applicant call for any musician or band from the Milwaukee region. We had over 300 applicants apply, and then each selected musician received a $20,000 grant to help build their business. And they work with us over the course of a 3-month accelerator program. So during this program, we actually took these artists to LA and New York to meet with publishers, producers, record labels, folks at Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, who are focused on like playlist curators, et cetera, all focused on getting them exposure and network that they need to be able to be a world-class artist, but in their hometown, in this case, Milwaukee. We've since extended this program to Cleveland, where we're sponsored by the city of Cleveland, as well as Detroit, where we partner with Motown Records and Universal Music Group to have what's called the Motown Accelerator, which is pretty cool. And then we did the same thing with art, visual art. This is a program called Fellowship.art, also takes place in Milwaukee. It's sponsored by American Family Insurance, but it's the same model. We select 4 visual artists. They each receive a $15,000 grant to help build their business and focus on creating a seminal piece of work at the end of that and get exposure to galleries, museums, art collectors, et cetera, all throughout that process. I mentioned the Motown Accelerator in Detroit, which is pretty cool. And that's it. So I know that's an earful. So thank you for listening to all of that. And I try to be respectful of everyone's time, but would love to answer any questions about Generator or the various work that we do around startups and entrepreneurship.